So for today's lecture, we are going to see comparative study between your SaaS, PaaS and IaaS model. So the very first characteristic is full form. So SaaS stands for software as a service, PaaS stands for platform as a service, IaaS stands for infrastructure as a service. Second characteristic, general users. Who are the people who are going to basically benefit of it or who are going to be the users of them? So in case of SaaS, it is business users. In case of PaaS, it is developers and deployers. And in case of IaaS, it is system managers. So here in business users, these are the people those who are going to use most of the applications for as per their daily needs. That is why we have business user here. In PaaS, there will be developers and deployers who are going to take new platforms. They're going to test their code on different platforms. They are going to check whether the code is running same on the different platforms or not. That is why we have a developers and deployers here. Last, we have system managers because in as you are designing an entire infrastructure, the administrator or system manager will see that what are the requirements, what are the things required for making the customized infrastructure, whether there will be compatibility between different hardware and software, how they are going to be integrated in an environment. So this is all going to be taken by your system managers. Next, we have the third characteristics that is services available. So when I talk about SaaS, it is dealing with software applications. So you will see here all the services with respect to applications like your email, your office automation, your CRM, your web testing, your virtual desktop. Next, when I talk about PaaS, here we are dealing with platform as an end service. So here you are going to deal with different operating platforms, their integration, their testing, their employment, deployment, everything is going to be there. Last, we have as that is infrastructure as a service. So here you're going to see all the infrastructure managing services that can be operating systems, your network storages, your backup services, your virtual machines, all will become the part of infrastructure as a service. Next, we have the characteristic that is business justification. So, in case of the SaaS, may mostly it is going to take care of business tasks and business activities. In PaaS, it is going to take care of deploying services and applications for the users on different platforms. As here, you're going to create the platform for the service and application test will be done on the development phase. So that is your business justification. Next, abstraction. So abstraction simply here refers to that what will be the user allowed to see. Okay, abstraction is nothing but you're going to give the freedom to allowed to see what you're going to hide and what you're not going to hide. Okay, so in case of SaaS, there will be complete abstraction. Complete abstraction means what? You will be just be provided with the requirement what we have asked for, but you're not going to be shown the details that what is the version of the software, where it is running, on which platform it is running. So that will be completely abstracted. That will be hidden from you. Only whatever is your requirement as per your software as a service that will be fulfilled and will be given to you. In case of the past, there will be abstraction of hardware, software, and application services. So here again you're going to abstract, you're going to hide the hardware and software which are they going to be there. All what is required by you will be given to you, but the details, technical details, other information related to that as a service will be hidden from you and you will be not be given, because as a cloud provider I'm not giving services to just one or two people. Okay, at a single point of time I am giving services to multiple people, so I have to keep a lot of abstraction. I need to keep my data hidden from the other users. So that is why abstraction is important. Next, in as here you are going to abstract the entire hardware resources. So all the hardware resources which you are going to provide as a infrastructure that will be hidden to the user. That's all about your abstraction. So examples you can see PayPal, Salesforce.com. In past we have Azure service platform, Force.com, and in as we have Amazon EC2 and Go. Next characteristic we have is control. So in case of SaaS, there is a highest degree of control and flexibility. The reason is that you can any point of time, or you can add your applications at any point of time. You can remove it. User can select any application in middle. Also, they want to switch, then that is also possible. Because so in software, they will take your requirements and all the softwares will be going to be available in the cloud, and you can keep switching them at any point of time if you want to keep moving between the softwares. So there is a lot of flexibility and the control is also there. You will be given definitely a minimal control, but the highest control will be managed by your cloud provider. And again, there is going to be flexibility from their end as well. If you have your sudden change in your software applications, if your requirements suddenly come up in the last minute, so that will be also accommodated, since there is just a software as an application. In case of the PaaS, there will be good degree of control and flexibility. It is good. Good means what? It is like somewhat between your good and bad. Yeah, it is somewhat better. Okay, so here, because it is a platform as a service, right? So if suddenly if you come up with any platform, in that case may not be possible. The platforms which are common ones will be rarely available, like your iOS platform, your Android platform, your Windows platform, Linux platform. But if you come up with something new platform, then in that case to accommodate that or make that ready at the runtime may not be that much possible or may not be flexible. That is why we have a good degree. The platforms which are common will be easily, available to you. If you have some other requirements, so it is suggested that you just let them know before, so that they can make it available for you at that point of time when you want the service. Next we have is as, that is your infrastructure as a service. So here it is going to be minimal degree of control and flexibility. Here you cannot work more. Okay, there will be less of flexibility because here it is infrastructure. All your platforms are going to come here, all your software applications are going to come here. So here you cannot expect that there will be a lot of flexibility. The flexibility almost goes when you talk about operating system, because operating system, then you have to find, see the compatibility of this operating system with the applications and your other things. So again, the flexibility here is minimized. That is why here you have minimal degree of control and flexibility. Infrastructures which are common ones and which are easy to deploy can work well. But if you come up with something very new requirements, like which has not been seen before or which have not been designed before, so in that case, they have considered this aspect, and that is what they have reported as minimal degree of control and flexibility. Next, characteristic operational cost. So in case of SaaS, there is very less operational cost. In case of PaaS also, it is somewhat limited. But in case of as, it is highest, because here you are designing entire infrastructures. And when you're designing entire infrastructure, you can expect that there will be a good operational cost. And this operational cost is something which is from your end. Like if you're not going for a cloud service, if you're thinking of doing it on your own end or to do it something on your part, then in that case, it is going to be highest. Even for the cloud provider also, it is going to be highest, but he has everything ready made. Okay, he has a ready made environment with him. He has a software application environment. He has platform as a service environment ready. So you just have to take this from there and it has to put into IS. That's also for him also, the operational cost will be highest, but it will comparatively easy as you will deploy at your end. So this is something is need to be considered. Like next we have is portability. In SaaS, there is no portability. In PaaS, we can assume that there is going to be lower portability. Infrastructure here, you will have a lot of portability. So portability here simply means that how much freedom you can give to, manage the things, or how much freedom you can give to do the scalability into your existing deployment model. So here that is all about portability. Risk of vendor interlock. Okay, so in case of SaaS, it is going to be highest. In case of PaaS, it is going to be medium, and in as it is going to be lowest. Okay, vendor interlock simply refers that what is the possibility that your vendor can they can ask for you more services, or they can provide some risk oriented issues. That is something which is the risk of vendor. Next we have is security. So if I talk about security in case of SaaS, as a cloud service provider, you require a lot of transparency. Okay, you require a lot of policies to be determined. There will the degree of the security here will be there. It will be minimal. You cannot expect that it will be very much. Okay, in case of PaaS, you need to have additional security because you are going to use many applications. Some of the applications may report bug as well, so we don't want that to be conflict with our platform. So there will be additional security. There will be a lot of patches or security checking daily or frequently, you can say, just to make sure that your platform remains unaffected. Okay. In case of as, here we usually consider a virtual machines, because when you talk about infrastructure as a service, you will always go for virtual machines, your VMwares, where you're going to have your softwares, and then from there you're going to make them run. So here we have to make sure that there is a security check on over your virtual machines, check whether the software has been completely, uh, running over your VMs or not, because most of the time, because of the VMs, you set the sizes. Like in VMs, we usually set that how much RAM you want, how much HDD you want. Everything is selected by us. Okay. So whenever you're considering your VM, you have to make sure that whatever software you are making run with the VMs, either they are security protected or not. There are no bugs or errors, because that same thing will be reflected in your VMs as well. So you have to check for the security mechanism in case of SAS, in case of PAS, and in case of AS as well. So my chapter number 2 is principles of parallel and distributed computing. Okay, so the topics which we are going to look into here is eras of computing, parallel versus distributed computing, elements of parallel computing, elements of distributed computing, and technologies for distributed computing. Okay, so this is your chapter number 2. Your chapter number 1, which we have completed as of now, it was just the basics of cloud computing. Okay, but now we are going to understand in more detail like how this cloud computing has come into the picture. Like, because if I talk about cloud computing, it will take a baseline of any of the computing mechanism that can be a parallel computing or that can be a distributed computing. So this is always the baseline for any computing. If you're designing any infrastructure, if you're designing any computing architecture, so in that case, you should know that whatever services which you're giving to your consumers or your customers, it's going to be of what type. Either you're going to use a parallel computing mechanism or either you're going to use in distributed. But the answer is very much logical here. Whenever you want to provide services to many people at a single point of time, then you can't go for parallel computing, you have to go with the distributed computing. And today also, whatever services which you are getting through the public platform internet, everything works on a one principle, that is your distributed computing. And what is distributed computing? Today we are going to look into this chapter. Okay. So let's begin. So first we are going to start that what are the eras of computing. Okay, so eras of computing simply refers again the same thing, that over the years, what are the different eras of computing, how the computing has come into the picture. So initially, if you see over your screens, the computing have actually started, the concept have actually come up into year 1940. Okay, and in 1940, we have come up with the models, that is your parallel model and your sequential model. Okay, so both of them are same, parallel and sequential model, but just different words, different panofanas, you can say. Okay. So in 1940, we have come up with parallel era and we have come up with sequential area. So in both of them, you were taking care more of the architecture, that how you are going to design the architecture. You had taken care of different compilers which are working to compute the execution of what this architecture, different applications which are running on this architecture, and this is the two important, you can say, the eras which were there in the initial days, that was in your 1940s. Okay, so if I talk about your distributed computing, it has come a later on, because this was the very initial years. Like 1940, you have just come up with an idea that you want to have a computing, and with that they have come up with two models which were sequential and parallel. Slowly, gradually, they realized that we have to have a distributed computing. So this was something which was pretty late. You cannot expect that this will be in the very initial years, but maybe after 6 or 7 years, we have come up with this. Okay, so the four key elements of computing which are there in here was architectures, compilers, applications, and problem-solving environment. These were the four key elements in both of this era. Okay, so here we have actually started developing with hardware architectures. Then we have started developing the software over it. Then we have started compilers and operating system over it. And finally, at the end, we have started deploying the application. So this was all about the hierarchy, that how the computing has taken place in those older times, in the 1940s, when they have just come up with the computing as a concept. Okay, computing basically in very simple word means that you are going to do some sort of execution, and for that doing execution, you need a baseline of hardware, you need a baseline of software, you need compilers, you need applications, and together you can make one infrastructure, and over that infrastructure you can do the computing. Okay, so remember in initial era it was two dominant models of computing which were used, that was sequential and parallel, and the important elements which were there were architectures, compilers, application, and problem solving environment. Next, we are moving to the very first era, which is what is parallel computing. Okay, so if I talk about parallel computing, this is also known as parallel processing. Okay, so it is simply like if you want your task to be completed in a lesser time and you have a very bigger task to be completed, rather than relying on just one single machine to do that task, let's divide that task into different machines. Okay, with dividing this task into different machines, first of all the task will be completed faster. Okay, you the second thing, this processors will make sure that they are completing the task on time and then putting the same changes into the memory. So parallel computing is very much important because your entire big task is broke down into different subtasks which will be handled by the processors which are there, and in lesser time you can complete your work. Okay, so parallel computing is also known as parallel processing. It is a form of computation that can carry multiple calculations simultaneously. Okay, so in parallel computing you will be having multiple processors, and all these multiple processors are going to be connected with a single memory. Whatever, for example, I have 5 processors, and as each of the processors I have assigned 20 blocks of data to be processed. Okay, so once first processor is done, the changes will be saved into the memory. Once the second is done, the changes will be saved into memory, and so on. Okay, so that is why there is a common memory which is connected between all the processors, and with this any of the processor which has completed this task, they can save the changes into the memory, quickly write that side. Okay, so parallel computing is basically useful in the scenarios where you have to do a lot of complex calculation, where your tasks are going to be very big. Okay, and you want to save the time, so you can divide that workload between different processors and get your work done in a lesser time. Okay, no doubt there are going to be some disadvantages also of the parallel system. Okay, usually parallel, the one of the common disadvantage which usually has, in parallel computing there is a possibility of a deadlock situation. Now what is deadlock situation here? Like whatever one processor is processing, that may be required by the another processor. Okay, so until unless the first processor doesn't release that particular instruction, the another process cannot execute, so it is in a wait state. Okay, so usually parallel computing is again advisable when you have to uh, you know execute the sequence of block which are independent of each other, and you just want them to be executed and saved into the memory. If there is dependency between your task, in that case parallel computing again will come across some issues, because each of them will be waiting for the instructions which is required by the other processor, and other processor is actually in the execution state. Okay, again the downside of parallel computing is like in here you are going to have a lot of processors because you are dividing the load between different processors. So adding more processors is again an expensive, because processors are not something which comes very cheap, they are expensive. Okay, and these are high processor which are going to do the processing very fast, like they are the highly configured server type processors. Okay, so here whatever you give them, they will process in very lesser time, and again you are dividing this into different processor, then eventually it is going to take a more lesser time. Okay, so in short we can say the parallel computing is very much helpful. It can help you to complete your task in the lesser time, but you have to take care that there should be no dependency of the code, or you can see whatever execution which you want to perform, there should be no dependency. If there is individual blocks which are working together, and then they are saving the result into the memory, that's all okay, and that is, it will help you to do the task in very lesser time. But if there is any sort of dependency, the instruction which is executed by one processor that is required by another processor, if there is a dependency like this, in that case there will be latency, there can be delay, because another processor will be waiting for the first one to release. So that you really need to take care of. So the next we have is distributed computing. Okay. So distributed computing here simply means that you will be having all your computers in the distributed in nature. Everyone which is in a distributed architecture will have, there will be processors and they will be having their own memory. Okay. And whatever is saved in the one memory, that sorry, in one processor that will be saved in all other processors which are interconnected to each other. Okay, so in distributed architecture, basically the main concept is that there will be main server and there will be many sub servers. Okay, all the information in all the main server and the sub servers will be there, because in case if there is due to any reason, if your one server goes down, it can be easily backed up by the other servers. So in distributed computing, there are multiple computers that are interconnected to each other via a network to communicate and collaborate. And the main goal here is you have to keep all the data into all the servers, and you have to give a distributed architecture. Okay, so every goal in a distributed system here is to allow the users to share the resources and get the work done. Okay, so the term distributed usually refers that here you are going to divide your computations into different units, and you're going to execute on different computing environments. Okay, so you have to remember here you have your computing elements, but here you had your different processors. Okay, so computing elements here refers to different computers or servers which have their own processors, which have their own memory. So that is, with this, the user, once they have saved the data on the server, that will be automatically back up on the different servers as well. In case the servers which were connected goes down at any point of time, it can be backed up by other servers. Okay, so here the processors are going to be on different nodes. Okay, that can be on different machines, different computers, that can be always there on the different nodes. Okay, and the processors on the same machine or same computer or the cores within the same processor. So there will be different machines, servers. Those servers will have computers. Those computers will have their own processor and memory that will process the task. Okay, I'll just give you one simple example of distributed computing. Like the most common application which we use is Gmail. Okay, so Gmail is one of the most application which is used by every one of us, and Gmail have a lot of servers in different countries. As you know, that Gmail service is provided globally. Okay, so in case if one of the server is down, we really don't know about it that this server has been down, because that is easily backed up by the other servers. Okay, so usually in distributed architecture, what happens? You have your main servers and you have your many sub servers, and that are interconnected with each other. In case even if your one server goes down, it will be backup, or it will be you can say escalated to the other server. Okay, it will be managed by other server. Only the thing which you will feel that your server is today down, the request or response whatever you are receiving are going to be very much slow. That is only the lag or delay which you will feel. Rest everything, the work which you're doing, it is going to be saved into the server, and later on it can be backup. So in distributed, this is one of the best advantage, that the nodes are interconnected with each other. All of them have the data with them. So in case one goes down, it can be easily backup. So when we talk about term distributed, you have to always make sure that the locations which are there of the computed elements are not going to be same. They are going to be located dispersely at different places, and they are going to be connected with each other. And each of the computers which are connected to each other, or servers which are connected to each other, they are going to be having the different hardwares, or they will having the different softwares depending on what operating system they are running, what processor they are running. So important here is not that what platform or what operating system they are running. Important is that the information which is there is should be saved in all the servers, so that it can easily back up by the other server in case one of the server goes down. So the classic example of distributed computing can be your internet computing systems, which we use usually, that combines the different architecture, there are different systems, there are different protocols. So these are one of the best example. Internet computing is one of the best example. Okay, where you have many servers connected to each other. If your one server goes down, it is easily backed up by the other servers, and your requests are fulfilled. Okay, because there are many underlying protocols which are working there in the background, which is helping you to do the processing and get your work done. Okay, so that is your distributed computing. So that's it for the day. In the next lecture, we will see difference between parallel and distributed computing.